Hey, everybody, thanks for clicking. This is the best years in gaming, 1997. Hell of a year. I'm Canadian Matt. This is American Matt.
What's up?
We've got Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy Tactics, Age of Empires, GoldenEye, Star Fox 64, Diddy Kong Racing, Turok Dinosaur Hunter, Crash 2, Oddworld, Age Odyssey, Symphony of the Night, Tomb Raider 2, Tekken 3, Quake 2, Final Fantasy Tactics again, Blade Runner for PC, Fallout 1, Grand Theft Auto 1, X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter, Bushido Blade, WCW Enduro World Tour, Street Fighter 3, Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces, and The Curse of Monkey Island. So, Matt, where were you in 1997?
In 1997, I was going into the third grade
Right.
and moving from my childhood home into a strange and unfamiliar place, and everything was just a nightmare.
Wow. But you had your colorful N64 to shepherd you through.
And you know what? I also had, I was so into, I remember this time of my life so vividly, not only because of the move and everything happening, but because the commercial that they were showing on TV for Final Fantasy VII seemed so important to me.
Right.
And it seems so, I mean, this was way back before video games were like very mainstream.
You didn't
I mean,
see them on TV? You never saw them on TV?
Yeah, you definitely didn't see commercials for them. And the fact that Final Fantasy VII not only had a commercial that I saw just on regular TV, but it was so cinematic and so beautiful. I just felt like every time I saw that commercial, I felt like I was being swept away on an adventure. And I was like, I wanted everybody in my family to see it and for them to be excited. And
Were they excited?
No, not at all. But they felt my enthusiasm or were annoyed by it enough that we were actually visiting family in Ohio. I was, 5 hours away from my PlayStation, but the day it came out, I had to have it the day it came out. I've been looking forward to it. And that's one of the days that I'll never forget is going out. And like I remember walking paranoid into the store, like everybody who walked past me, I just assumed they were going straight for the game and that it was going to be sold out when I got there. And I just couldn't believe that it was like a Target or a Walmart or something. I couldn't, or Kmart. I couldn't believe when we got there that it was just sitting behind the shelf. It was like winning the lottery. And I remember getting out of there and the instruction booklet was dog-eared and worn out before I even made it back to Tennessee. I just flipped through it 200 times.
Right.
And playing through that game was so special to me. And that's actually how I met my best friend in school. One of the first friends I made, I was talking his ear off about Final Fantasy VII, and he was like, you need to talk to this guy because he's also been talking about that game. And so I met my friend Lee that way, and we pen palled through that game. I mean, we called each other up every single night and would spend like 3 hours on the phone where we were both playing through the game at the same point and talking about everything that happened. And it's just one of those experiences, man. Everybody has at least one of those games that just defined their childhood and like really transformed them into a hardcore gamer and somebody who cared deeply about stories as they're communicated in video games. And to me, that was Final Fantasy VII, hands down. And the fact that it came out with all these incredible other games, I mean, that list is exhausting to think about. I don't even remember how I got my hands on all of those games. I must have gotten them over the course of a few years. But just a huge year. But do you have any stories like that in 97? Was there any like one huge game that really changed your life that year?
I mean, I was definitely privy to the whole hype train of Final Fantasy VII. I remember there was an actual Sony store in our local mall, and they would just have that thing running constantly, nonstop, and just like we had never. I mean, this was the late 90s. The computer graphics were still being figured out. This was like Square actually had cutting edge Hollywood guys working on the graphics for Final Fantasy VII. Like this was like right up there with what you could watch in a movie, and to have this in a game it was unbelievable. We were so used to kind of getting everything a little bit secondhand in video games, like the story's going to be it's going to suffer, and everything about it it's not quite the movie experience. And this was one of the first times where, I mean, just that grand adventure. I'd never played a Final Fantasy before that. I grew up with the Genesis, so I didn't have a lot of great RPGs. And I thought this was my time that I wanted to get on board. Everything about it seemed so cool. Sephiroth and that burning village, that's what I wanted to have a part of. And I remember I went to go rent it when it came out, and for some reason they had made a mistake. And instead of it being a 2-day rental at Blockbuster, it already had the 7-day rental on it, and it had just come out. That made no sense. Why would they do that? Normally that takes 6 months for that to happen. And I just quickly went up and rented it before they could check it and made sure I had it and that's what you want it for. Of course, I didn't have a memory card. So I just left it on for a week, and I brought my best friend Gavin over, and we normally always play 2-player games. And that was the first one where he's like, no, I'll just watch. Just wanted to watch it. Can you imagine that? People watching someone playing a video game? Crazy. And actually, I think the next time I went to go rent it, it was out. So I grabbed Tactics and didn't know what it was, but I just wanted some more Final Fantasy, that universe. And I was so blown away with how great of a game that was. I'd never played a strategic RPG before, but that was a real one more turn, kind of grind you into the night. It was like, reminded me of the first time I played Civilization. It was such a golden time for video games. And I was so lucky that my little brother had an N64 at the time. So a lot of these games on the list, we had a chance to experience because of, being able to share games.
Yeah, and Tactics was another big first for me. And Tactics was the first game. 7 was the first Final Fantasy I ever played, like you. And then Tactics was the first RPG that I played that had any kind of job system, which I know was kind of championed by Final Fantasy anyway. But Tactics is weird for me because it's one of those games that I never even got close to beating. I think the furthest I ever got in a single play file was maybe 12 or 13 hours of gameplay, and I've probably done that 4 or 5 times on separate files, and I never get past that point, but I still love the game so much, which is so weird because I know I probably missed out on some of the most advanced classes and cooler skills and obviously like huge plot points, and I know that later on you can get Cloud in your party and Biggs and Wedge and Sid, and there were so many little Easter eggs like that I missed out on. But I was so addicted to that job system where you picked a job in a class with skills that you really wanted, and you trained until you mastered those skills, and then you got to keep them and then move on to another class where you would just like combine skills from different classes and kind of make your ultimate DPS or your ultimate healer, your ultimate mage, and the way that you had to, master this many skills, and then after you got these black mage skills and these whatever skills, you could unlock the time mage or the some kind of sage. And it was so mysterious to me, that whole class and skill system. And I've craved that in pretty much every tactical RPG that I've played ever since then. That's usually the first thing I look for is, what is the skill system and jobs? How do I get new jobs, classes, skills? What happens when you progress and level up? And are those progression systems addictive and rewarding? Because that's what was most important to me back then, and that's kind of stayed true ever since. That's why I think I'm so addicted to games like Diablo and Destiny and like loot-driven games, is because it's that same sense of like taking things here and there and synergizing. Like with loot, it's finding pieces of loot that really make you, really enable you to play the class how you want to play it exactly. And I think I get that from the Tactics years of kind of combining different skills from different classes to synergize and kind of play a certain type of magic or attack or healing or support character exactly the way I wanted to. So Tactics was amazing in that regard, and it's a game that I'll probably will quadruple or quintuple dip on and buy sometime soon on mobile, because I know it's out there on Android or maybe on my PS Vita. So yeah, just an amazing game.
Sticking with PlayStation, we also saw Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I played a little bit of Castlevania on the NES, but those games were pretty difficult when I was pretty young. And in 1997, I was in grade 7, a little older, a little more mature. I could handle these more mature games. And Symphony of the Night was a game that I didn't actually play at the time, and not recently, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, I ended up playing when I brought a PS3 to work out in the oil fields of Canada, and I felt very different from all the guys that I worked with. They were like kind of gruff and tough, and they wanted to get wasted and high all the time, And I was there to make money, and I just wanted to play some video games, And I found one other guy there that was also into music and also into video games, and he showed me Symphony of the Night. We downloaded that and then sort of tag teamed that together, taking shifts on it, and whoever wasn't playing it would be playing guitar and trying to figure out the cool riffs and that incredible soundtrack, that hybrid metal classical. And the game is just so fluid. I didn't play a lot of Metroid when I was a kid because it kind of creeped me out. But this Symphony of the Night, I loved just the motion of it. And the graphics were just so gorgeous. And it's sad to say goodbye to AAA games that would use that that more hand-drawn, gorgeous style. But it's a game that still holds up pretty well today. And it is definitely worth giving a playthrough for Symphony of the Night. And we have Mr. Castlevania himself, Igarashi. He calls himself. He's got a new Castlevania throwback coming out pretty soon. I don't know about soon. He's working on it on Kickstarter, so it's got some blood-stained stain of the ritual stain. So
yeah.
Also on PlayStation, Crash Bandicoot 2, Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, Tomb Raider 2, Tekken 3. I don't know if that came out on PlayStation at the time or if that was just in the arcade. But I had that for PlayStation. It was a very good port, and it was just a really fun one to blast through. It even had this sort of faux side-scrolling beat-em-up that you could play, but using the main moves of the game. So, an awesome game. On the N64 side of things, GoldenEye, Star Fox 64, Diddy Kong Racing, and Turok Dinosaur Hunter, all in the same year. I mean, the N64 had an overall very small library, but you could easily find enough games, enough really classic, 8, 9, 10 out of 10 games
easily
to keep you busy very long and to keep you and your friends busy. I mean, all 4 of those games, and even Turok actually, is they have multiplayer. Did Turok have multiplayer? Yeah, I think it did. Actually,
I'm trying to think back. Turok is a game that I rented like 10 times. I never played with anybody.
You never wanted to commit to
the campaign.
You just wanted to grab it because it was a little more mature than many of the other Nintendo games, and it had a lot of fog, but it looked pretty good at the time, and it was had a lot of interesting things going on with it. But I mean, Diddy Kong surprised everybody, and Star Fox was good old Star Fox from Super Nintendo, but with that great 4-player dogfight mode. And then GoldenEye. I mean, GoldenEye was like the best-selling game for so long. It never quit. I'll credit my little brother with when he was choosing a game for Christmas, I told him, you should get Bomberman. I think that's good. And I'd never even played Bomberman. I just had heard it. I was being a little hipster. And he went against what I thought, and he got GoldenEye. And I was like, why would you want to be James Bond when we can play Bomberman together? And he was right. Hours and hours and hours of playing on the facility, making up your own sort of custom rules, unlocking everything, and just mastering those maps. And it's trapping somebody in a corner. It was just, that whole era to me was sleepovers when you'd get 3 people spending the night, and you had all. And the great thing about it was that everybody had an N64, so you always had the 4 controllers because they just had to bring it over. You didn't have to buy a multi-tap like I had for my PlayStation. There was nothing else. They just brought it over, plugged it right in. Everybody brought 1 game or so, and you were set for the whole night. And your parents were like, they're not getting into any trouble. They're going to be right by that TV for the whole weekend.
Yeah, everybody crowded around a little CRT TV. And
oh, you would be this close.
Oh, yeah. Playing facility, remote mines only, and just crying, laughing, just chasing each other around, throwing remote mines and detonating them. And yeah, dude, that was and I remember a multiplayer that sold me on a game was Diddy Kong Racing too, because I loved the game, and this was another one that I had rented, and this was before the holiday season. And I don't know why I never got Mario Kart 64, and to this day I don't really see the appeal. People are going to stone me for saying that, but I don't know, it looks kind of ugly, and I can understand why there was a lot of hype around it, but Mario Kart 64 never really, I've played it even as a young teenager, I played it at friends' houses. I'm like, I'm good. I'm not going to buy this. I'll have fun with you guys, but I'm good. But Diddy Kong Racing was the total opposite, where I didn't really hear anything about it, and then I played it, and it totally blew away my expectations, and I couldn't believe how much fun I was having, and I couldn't believe how satisfying it was to kind of go through the meta game. Like as you progress through races, you had this like in between hub world, and you started off in your cart, and then after a while you got this little hovercraft you could drive around the world, and then after so many races you unlocked the plane, which you could fly around anywhere, and it was so freeing and so fun. You could kind of switch characters on the fly, and
Who was your main in Diddy?
Tip. I think his name was Tip Top or Tip Tup.
Tip Tup.
Yeah, the turtle.
I was a Tigger man.
Okay. And then just renting that, my sister and I actually were messing around in the multiplayer and had so much fun that I convinced her that it was a game that she wanted as well, and that's how we ended up getting it that Christmas. I don't know if I would have gotten it otherwise, but still, I think probably pre. You know what? I think I can say this with confidence. Pre Mario Kart 8. I think Diddy Kong Racing is probably my favorite racing game of all time. I think my favorite racing game, hands down, is Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U. I think that is just a perfect game.
It is.
But next to that, I don't really think there's much competition except for Diddy Kong Racing. That's right up there. And then maybe Super Mario Kart, like right underneath. But that was just an incredible game. What else was on? What am I missing? There was Turok. There was Diddy Kong.
GoldenEye, Star Fox, Diddy Kong, Turok.
That's right.
That was their big ones. Put one of those out every quarter, and you're set. There was a girl in our high school prom who went really crazy, and people took some photos of it, and it got sent around in emails, and it got sent to her dad. And her dad, I don't know if it was someone sending in like, you should see this, or if it was just somebody being like, hey, look at these crazy girls. And she got grounded for an entire summer because of this. And she was my neighbor, and I went over there, and she had gotten so good at Diddy Kong Racing and didn't even really like video games, but that's all she had to do. It was insane. It was like playing the wizard from the Nintendo movie. I was good, and I was really trying to study what she had learned, but she had transcended me and all strategy. And she just figured it out and slowed it down. It was very impressive. All right, let's look at some other firsts that came out. We had Fallout 1 for the PC, Grand Theft Auto 1. These games were still finding their feet, but still really important. Quake 2 hit. And we had X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, probably the weakest entry in that series. Worth mentioning just because X-Wing was so revolutionary and TIE Fighter was a perfect game and still actually holds up. I was running through it a little while ago, even went out and bought a joystick, and it's still a great game. On the N64, there was another great 4-player fighting game, was WCW NWO World Tour. That was still finding its feet. Revenge nailed the format. WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy took it a little further, but World Tour was them figuring it out. Street Fighter 3, definitely not as much... nowhere near the level of fame of Street Fighter 2, but a very beautiful, beautiful game. Very, very hardcore, especially with the parry system. It was made for the tournament scene for fighting. So, and if you haven't seen Dago's 32 hit parry, Ken against Chun-Li, go watch that on YouTube.
Is that the one with the awesome rap intro song?
I don't know. There's one,
or is that one of the alphas? It was on one of our. Hear the song. I remember I was just really blown away. It was like this really awesome like hip hop song for Street Fighter.
It was for whatever one was on Dreamcast. I think that's what we were doing.
Okay. Maybe that was one of the alphas.
Have you not seen this? This is just it's like a competitive match. Two of the best guys in the world, and one player has a sliver of health left, and the other player goes to finish him off by just using a super and cheesing him, right? Because even if you're blocking, you're going to die. And what he does is he does a parry, which means you have to press forward at the exact moment they hit you during like an alter combo. So there's like 32 different hits of varying heights.
Way.
Oh, it's nuts. And he just parry. Like no one thought he was going to do it. They're like, oh, it's over. And he goes through. The whole crowd gets up and screams. It's pretty magic.
Wow.
There's a game for the PC that I played and wasn't expecting much, but Blade Runner was based on the movie. A different character. He's not a Harrison Ford type, but not like voiced by Harrison Ford or anything. But the cool thing about this was you played the detective, and there were events happening in real time all around you, and it was like a very mature feel to it. So the game had a lot of different endings and a lot of different results, and it's a real surprising game. And I thought even that probably holds up okay. I mean, some of those point and click games can be a little rough to go back to, but that had like a really cool feel to it. And coming from the consoles, it was neat to play something so mature and so dark, watching people get murdered. And then there was a Curse of the Monkey Island, which I don't know anything about, but people say that's a pretty great game. So
Yeah.
Oh, and Bushido Blade. That was a like such an interesting samurai fighting game with like instant deaths, hyper realistic, and just a very Japanese game. A game I'd never really seen at anything like it at that point. So 1997, that was a hell of a time to be a kid with a console.
Killer.
Yeah, it's really magical time. Makes me want to go fire up my N64 right now. Don't you wish we could play these N64 games online? But I guess that's why you have a Wii or a Wii U. And now we definitely have to play some Mario Kart 8.
Oh, yeah.
So that'll be happening. Well, everybody, let us know if we missed any of your favorite games from 1997. We'll be doing another video on best years in gaming coming out next week. Bye for now.